Welcome to Real Estate Analytics 101. My name is Saad, and the topic of this lesson is data storage. We're going to go over how to store data and manage data so that it can be used by the rest of your company, and the data can be trusted to be accurate and kept up to date. So looking at this diagram of the course syllabus, we're at the orange dot 1.3. In the last lesson on data extraction, we talked about the processing that needs to be done in order to make the data usable. Usable for analytics, usable for calculating metrics, and displaying on dashboards. So data storage can be simple or complex depending upon whether you work alone, like in a wolf pack of one, or if you work in a team or a large organization. So how you approach data storage depends on whether data analytics and metrics tracking is a one-off sporadic activity in your company, or if it is ongoing and continuous. So let's assume you work in a larger real estate company. And your executive team wants to be able to track metrics continuously. They want metrics to be readily available. So preparing for a board meeting, for example, shouldn't require hours and hours of data preparation and creating dozens of Excel files. The metrics for monthly business reviews should be readily available. Regional managers should be able to run their weekly operations meetings without having to manually prepare the metrics before the meetings. So if that's the expectation, which is the case for all of my clients, then data storage is not trivial. In this scenario, saving a large Excel file with lots of sheets on your local drive is not what I would call good data storage. So here's the context for this lesson. So you want to take your company from a state that looks like this, lots of reports run manually and saved wherever, lots of exports, lots of Excel files, to an environment with dashboards that refresh automatically, with data that is centrally stored and managed, and where metrics are available wherever they're needed. So with this in mind, let's talk about data storage. So the data is an asset, and it needs to be treated as a valuable asset. The information in your rent roll, in your collections, in your pro formas, the market rents, the leasing funnel, this is all valuable stuff. Savvy business leaders can turn this data into intelligent offers when it comes to acquisitions. They can make plans for financing and capital expenditures more accurately. They can use this information to decide how much to spend on advertising and on leasing. And this data can help design the resident experience, and so on. So the method you use for data storage must make your data accessible, shareable, reliable. It should be scalable and modifiable. And most importantly, the data must be secure. Sounds like a lot of features, and I'll explain what these terms pretty shortly. So if many people are going to use this data, it must be the single source of truth for how decisions are made. So what it'll take to make it reliable and trusted is a combination of good data management processes, well-trained people who manage and use the data, and practical technology that provides the level of automation and uptime that's required. I was once asked to assist a client with a data problem. A day before a board meeting, there was a debate there about the net rental income number. So 3 analysts were asked to calculate it, and they all came back with 3 different amounts for net rental income. Each had pulled the P&L separately. Each looked up concessions and rent relief numbers from different places. Each had gone to a different place to get the credit losses and bad debt numbers. Further, each of these analysts had different levels of expertise in Excel, and one of them frankly lacked basic understanding of some common mistakes that can be made using Excel. So it was no surprise that there were 3 different answers for last year's net rental income. Now, had there been a 4th analyst, there probably would have been a 4th number. So looking at process, people, and technology, all 3 things were broken in this situation. The board meeting happened anyway, but there was an asterisk when some of the financials were presented. So let's talk about each one of these expectations for data storage. These are the goals to be achieved by your data management processes. And when I say data must be accessible, I mean whoever needs that data should be able to get it easily. This applies to whether your data is in an Excel file or on SharePoint or in a large enterprise data warehouse. People should be able to get to it themselves, what I call self-service, without having to email somebody and request it and wait for it to be available. Metrics should be visible using a simple link, not having to open some attachment in some old email. Or if you're using Excel, you should be able to go to the Get Data menu and easily pull the data into your workbook. By shareable, I mean the data should be stored in a way that people don't have to have individual copies for themselves. There should be one copy only. I come across situations all the time where several people need the rent roll for their assignments, and each person has saved a copy of the rent roll in Excel in a local folder. And they add columns and formulas in the Excel file, and sometimes their data goes out of sync. They don't show the same unit counts, they don't show the same amount of rent charged, and so on. This is an example of data being stored in a way that is not shareable. Next, reliable data. So the data has to be trusted. In the previous lesson, we talked about how data in the source system can be unreliable. If systems like Yardi or Entrada or Rent Manager aren't being used properly, the data being entered could be unusable for reporting and analytics. Well, even if the data quality in the source system is good, it can be messed up after the data has been extracted. The accuracy of the data can be suspect if, for example, some rows have been duplicated, or if some of the data got deleted by mistake, or if incorrect or invalid calculations were introduced. So the data cannot be accurate and reliable unless there's change control and version control, and there's a way to check if there are any errors in the data. So change control means that if the data has to be modified, there needs to be some audit trail of who changed it, when, why, and so on. Now, change is normal. Some transactions need to be recategorized after the period has closed. Errors found in the system need to be reflected in the data that's already been pulled. Property names can change, chart of accounts can change, or you may decide that the calculation for vacancy loss, for example, should exclude certain statuses. So what this means is that the same report, for example, your P&L for the previous year, can show a different NOI before and after the change was made. Such changes need to be made in a controlled manner. Changes should be made only by specific people, and if there's no change control, the confidence in the data will fall really quickly. So related to change control is version control. Version control means that there's a way of explaining what impact the change had on the metrics that are being tracked. So if you're looking at two printouts of your, say, 2023 P&L, for example, and they both show a different income and expense and NOI, then you have two different versions of the same metrics. So someone needs to be able to explain how much was due to which change and which is the correct version. And if this happens a lot and your books need to be auditable, then you probably need to make change control and version control someone's responsibility. The last item for making data reliable is error detection. This means that you have to have a method for finding out if there's an error in your data. This check is best made when you are storing the data and also routinely before any major reporting cycle. So an example of error detection might be to look at the total income for a given property for a given month, and in the externally stored data, add up the totals for the child accounts and make sure they equal the total that's being displayed in the P&L report that you run from your accounting system. When you've got automation, such error detection can be built right into the code. So we've talked about making data reliable. Now let's go to scalability. So wherever you're storing your data, whether in an Excel file or an Access database or in a data warehouse, one thing you should assume is that the volume of the data is going to grow. And your preferred storage method should be able to handle that. You're going to add more historical data over time. Your data is going to get more granular. For example, storing P&L data initially, you'll also want to drill down to general ledger transactions. Or, from a vacancy loss number in the P&L, someone's going to ask you to drill down to the unit level and show which properties and units are driving the vacancy loss. That's what I mean by data becoming more granular. You'll also need to add more topics. Initially our clients ask us for, say, AR aging, charges breakdown, the P&L, and then later they want to add leads and move in, move out data and general ledger and so on. So you'll be able to handle all such requests if your data storage is scalable. So related to change control and version control is that your data storage arrangement needs to be modifiable. So change is normal. Make sure that changes can be made to serve the needs of the business. And changes such as fixing bad data should be made in one place and not have to be replicated across many different places. So if you rename properties or add GL accounts or split GL accounts into child accounts, for example, your reporting capability should allow such changes to be easily reflected in your data. And that's what I mean by modifiable. So when it comes to managing data, security should also be a serious consideration. And there are two ways to look at security: protecting your business data and protecting private information about your residents and prospects. So access to the data should be on a need-to-know basis. Your GL contains a lot of detail. One can see what's going into and coming out of your bank accounts. Transactions associated with investors and various LLCs can be exposed in a GL. Be careful with it. Don't leave such data lying around on a SharePoint folder or attached to emails. And then what about your residents? The rent roll lists personally identifiable information about your residents. Handle it very carefully. Please don't export the rent roll and then attach it to an email and send it somewhere. If you need to share it with somebody, at least do this. Remove the columns containing the names of the residents if possible. And then upload the file to a shared folder. Email attachments are not a good practice. So those are the goals that you want to strive for. Your processes need to deliver these goals. And in addition to having processes, you want the right people managing your data. It's obvious that managing data is a serious business, and the people doing it should possess necessary knowledge and experience. They should have a good understanding of your business so that they have the context for evaluating data quality. They need to understand your data, for example, what a metric like vacancy loss means, or what goes into an operating expense ratio. Let's talk about Excel for a bit. Just because everyone can look busy using Excel, it doesn't mean they're using Excel the right way for their assignment. Or worse, they're not generating more problems. I come across models all the time and see bad practices. For example, do you know people who use the VLOOKUP without the false argument? The exact match? The results of that are unpredictable. People also ignore the inconsistent formula error flag, without giving it a second thought. Some people don't know how copy and paste works in Excel when the filters are on. There needs to be a baseline of qualifications before you allow people to do data analysis in Excel. Otherwise, you could be working with bad models and bad data. So besides Excel, your team needs to know best practices about data management, the ones that we've already covered here. I recommend you write down guidelines and best practices for how you expect your analysts to handle data, and have a way of assessing if they have bought into these guidelines and are following them. The best time to do this is during onboarding a new team member or when you're rolling out your analytics program. So now let's go to technology. If these standards are applicable to your company, and if you appreciate the need for good processes for ensuring data integrity, then you need to invest in the right technology for your analytics platform. And this is where a data warehouse comes into the picture. A data warehouse is a centralized place to store your analytical data. Some other associated names are data lakes and data clouds. So instead of having your data spread out in Excel files on various folders and local databases, a data warehouse can enable you to comply with the best practices that we've discussed in this lesson. Here's a sample of some of the content that can be in a data warehouse. The data warehouses that we build for companies not only contain data pulled directly from their CRM or their accounting and leasing systems, we also load their pro formas from Excel, as well as data from external sources that they've acquired. In any data warehouse, the features of automation and security, error detection, error handling are built in. So automation refers to automating the extraction, transformation, and loading, or the ETL processes. Security means ensuring that only authorized people can access the data. Error detection is alerting when there's an outage or the data might not have loaded properly. And then error handling is being able to fix errors in the data, for example, reloading the data that got partially loaded or fixing incorrect data types and bad data on the fly. So here's what the end-to-end data flow could end up looking like. And procedures and practices are built into this to ensure data accessibility, shareability, reliability, and the other important features. So I hope you got a good idea of what's involved in data storage. If the data quality isn't being managed proactively, then the data isn't going to be trusted. And the business will operate, in some cases, by the seat of the pants. So I'll wrap up here. With this lesson, we're done with the data management module of the course. We will move next to data analysis. And the next lesson is going to be about data models. So a data model is a group of individual data sets that are joined together by columns so that they can be used for analysis or reporting. So thanks for watching. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on LinkedIn. And please share your comments and also let me know if you want us to cover something specific in the future lessons. So thank you.